And this week, the Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump can stay on 2024 ballots. And next month, on April 25th, the same court will review Trump's presidential immunity claim in that federal election interference case. Now, this was the case that was supposed to begin this past Monday. Well, that was before the high court effectively endorsed Donald Trump's delay tactics. Our next guest says the courts should act as soon as they are allowed to in order to hold Trump accountable, regardless of how close it is to Election Day. Quote, Trump's criminal trials should begin as soon as the Supreme Court dispatches with his absurd immunity claim. There is no legal reason why they cannot start in August, September, or even October. Well, joining us now is the author of those words, election lawyer Mark Elias. He is the founder of Democracy Docket and chair of the Elias Law Group, and I would argue one of the chief defenders of our democracy in this country.
Well, and to that end, I think there were a lot of people who watched this news come down and just felt absolutely dejected because there's an appetite for accountability, an appetite to see systems and structures in this company work. To those who feel that the opportunity for accountability has lost, to those who feel that there is not a glimmer of hope on the horizon, what do you say, Mark Elias?
We can't give up. We can't give up hope. The dictators, the authoritarians, one of the ways they rule is by making their populations feel hopeless. They want them to feel like there is no other way. And Donald Trump, he is a seller of hopelessness. He wants there to be, if Barack Obama wanted there to be hope and change, Donald Trump wants there to be static despair. And we cannot give in to that, right? We have to always have hope. And we have to remember that whatever is in front of us today in the courts, there is always an opportunity for redemption. And the Supreme Court will have its chance at redemption when it hears the immunity claim. It should rule quickly. If it follows the same schedule of 25 days after hearing the argument, we'll have a ruling in May. And then the trial courts need to stop giving him preferential treatment, stop treating him like he's anything other than a normal criminal defendant, and they need to schedule and execute those trials.
That's the rub right there. This whole process, and I've been making this noise on this point for a while, that Donald Trump has effectively bent the judicial system into a pretzel, and has almost challenged them. How dare you, treat me the way you would any other criminal because I'm the former president. Well, the other presidents didn't do what you did. So, yeah, you're not above the law. That, seems for a lot of folks, doesn't resonate with the court. It resonates with the people. We believe that, but our judicial system, and it's not just people in polite company saying this, Mark. There's a lot of folks around the country feel that the rulings that have come down in recent weeks, and now you had Eileen Cannon and her crazy down, in that case, just kind of leaning into this idea of how can we help Donald Trump, and so how do you overcome that? I get the hope argument, but how do you actualize that when clearly what I'm seeing seems to be a slow roll to get this thing past the election so Donald Trump gets reelected and makes it all go away? That's the thing. That's the view on the street.
Look, as usual, you are spot on correct. I've heard you make this point before, and it's actually a point I make in the piece that I wrote. The judiciary is not doing its job. And this is not, by the way, to attack just the Supreme Court. I'm critical of the trial judges.
And it's not a partisan point, folks. This is a real live point here. We see it happening.
When you and Mark Elias are violently agreeing, that's certainly not a partisan.
I was going to say life didn't begin that way between he and I.
Exactly.
But I think it's like critically important that people understand this, is that over and over again, what we have seen is courts give Donald Trump special treatment. They have not treated him like every other person who is facing charges. They are, look at how they tied themselves in knots over gag orders.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if a 25-year-old black man, resident of Washington, D.C., mouthed off about judges in D.C. Superior Court?
They will put him under the jail. Okay,
right?
Under the jail.
So the truth is, yes, we need the Supreme Court to do away with this frivolous case. But then we need the judges, the trial judges, the liberal and conservative trial judges, by the way, to start treating him like any other criminal defendant. And we don't schedule trials at the convenience of criminal defendants.
No, we don't.
Right? I mean, like, what other defendant gets to say, you know what, those 3 months, you know, September, October, November, very busy for me. I'm really not available that time. Maybe, you know, next May.
Next May.
And so that is, you're exactly right, that is the problem.
It's frustrating.
It struck me that the title of your piece is it is past time to bring Trump to justice. What? We always have to traffic in the what ifs. What if the trial judges fail us? Like, what? There is no. It feels like there is no recourse if the trial judges
like the last
and the Supreme Court,
right? The courts,
if they don't do their part, like what happens then? Like, what does this all mean?
Yeah, so I tried in the piece to make clear that I'm not so much saying what happens if they fail us electorally, because, you know, people will vote.
Well,
and all
right,
that.
yeah, I'm talking about the system.
But the system,
Yes.
right? The truth is that it is past time to bring Donald Trump to justice for the benefit of the courts. You know, we have seen the courts fail us, and we have seen the courts succeed and protect democracy. If the courts prove themselves unable, and it would be unable, to bring Donald Trump to trial and to justice, it will undermine, and rightly so, confidence that we have a one-tier justice system. I mean, what will it mean if a rich, powerful, you know, man like Donald Trump can evade timely justice while you know, the D.C. jails and jails around this country are filled with people who are being held on far less serious charges. So it is an existential crisis, not just for American democracy, but also for the American court system and the judiciary.
It's a crisis that the president picked up on during his State of the Union address. I want you to take a listen to something he had to say aimed specifically at the Supreme Court justices. Take a listen.
Look, it's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about.
First of all, get an Emmy to the camera operator, honey, because I was like...
But also give an Emmy to all the justices who have to sit there completely stone-faced and give nothing away.
Okay, Joe Biden was absolutely right. Like, take it. Supreme Court justices, like, hello, what is happening here? What is going on?
Look, they
It's left her speechless.
Literally, it don't
have you ever
happen
seen that
often.
before?
I've never seen that before.
I mean, leave it to the President of the United States and a bunch of justices to make Simone go speechless.
I mean, goodness, it's surprises every weekend.
But it speaks to that point of the frustration that people are feeling, and it behooves the president and his reelection campaign to say, if you are frustrated about this, if you're looking at the Supreme Court, don't despair, right? Come out and vote and show them that they say you got political power. Let's see it.
Right. But look, the Supreme Court made this bed for themselves, and now they're lying in it. I mean, I have no sympathy for Supreme Court justices who overturned, 60 years of precedent simply because they had the numbers, and then wrote that, and then came to the State of the Union. I mean, all of those things, I didn't go to the State of the Union. Right? I mean, and so good for President Biden in highlighting the words of the Supreme Court. He wasn't making this up. The President of the United States was reading the words of what the Supreme Court wrote. So here we are.
It was a good moment, and there were a number of good moments like that for the president. I just we've been talking about the courts, and we were talking about the whole judicial process. Just draw the lens out a little bit more on the politics of this moment, and how well do you think the president has been able, including the before what happened on the State of the Union on Thursday, how he's handled the politics of this moment? Because I think, to be honest, I think anybody else in this game would have cracked under the pressure and the frustrations of having to deal with his own base yapping at his heels about stuff he ain't doing, his opposition coming at him, and still navigating the country into a space where the markets are responding favorably. The global community is like, okay, Joe, what do you need us to do?
Yeah.
How do you assess his assessment of the political moment as this campaign kicks off?
Look, I think that Joe Biden is the man for this moment. And the reason, among others, is his years of experience in politics are showing through. You know, he is not panicking. He is not playing the hour-to-hour Twitter game. He is,
which is actually a lot of fun, just by the way.
Yeah, look, you know, I'm here for it. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Threads. You know, come follow me. But, hey,
Plug.
you know, but you know, he's not. He is letting his experience of having been in politics be an asset for himself and for the American people, because he's not letting the crazy Republicans get under his skin. He is understanding that he will be judged by the successes of the country when we get to next November, not today. And he is also now highlighting those successes, which are enormous successes, both in terms of the economy, in terms of putting the country out of COVID, remember what he took over from, but also about democracy. And I want to say a quick word about that. You know, a lot of people in this town roll their eyes when Joe Biden talks about democracy. But the fact is, presidents are there for historic moments. Lyndon Baines Johnson was there to give a historic address to Congress about democracy with the Voting Rights Act. John Kennedy gave historic addresses to Congress. Joe Biden gave a historic address to Congress. And, you know, people can be cynical all they want, but history will remember him kindly for that.
I think that's a very good point.